I think boutique consulting firms should be explored actually. And someone should not just focus on maybe a big brand name. The kind of focus I was getting was much better. Ask over the WhatsApp message if I had any doubt. There was no need of setting up a time to discuss all the doubts I had over the week. I think it was a very different approach which I got.
Hi everyone, this is Piyush Ranjan, the founder of Management Masters. We are a boutique admissions consulting firm for the top MBA programs around the world. Today we have with us Kshitij Agrawal. Kshitij worked with us to apply to ISB, and let's hear it from Kshitij. It's great to have you here with us, Kshitij. Could you just give us a brief introduction about what you have been doing and where your career and your professional and academic path?
Thank you, Piyush, for giving me this opportunity. So I am currently working at Flipkart, and I joined Flipkart straight out of college from IIT Varanasi. It's been around 4.75 years that I've worked at Flipkart in various roles. I have worked as a category manager. I've taken up projects on product management and as well as pricing and promotions. Apart from this, I like to play table tennis. I like to run marathons, and I like to read books. So that's about it.
Absolutely, that sounds great, and it sounds like a very interesting career sort of progression that you had at Flipkart. Right? So, could you just help us understand what exactly led you to start thinking about an MBA at this stage of your career?
Right. So there were two main reasons which motivated me to apply for an MBA. The first one was one incident which happened with my manager. Like this incident could summarize the overall gist of it. There was a project which we were working on to optimize pricing for our category. And it took me around 2 to 3 days to come up with the solutions to the use case. And when I presented it to my manager, her feedback was that there's already a concept around it which had been taught to her at ISB. She's also an ISB alumni. And that made me realize that maybe if I knew these concepts better, I would come to solutions faster and use my time in other things as well. The second aspect was to accelerate my career further. I've thought that an MBA would help with that. These were my major reasons.
Right. And that sounds like an incredible example of how you saw the value of an MBA probably, playing out in real life, right? So that sounds incredible. Could you just sort of paint a picture for us, like what is your expectation from an MBA, or what are you expecting to do post an MBA in terms of your short-term goals? Could you just help us understand that?
Right. So, post my MBA, I want to explore product management field. This is also because a couple of projects which I took on product management made me realize uh, how important the user journey is and how a product manager could help optimize various processes. And so my short-term goal after ISB would be to get into product.
Right. That makes sense. Now, when it comes to the MBA application journey, right, there is multiple things that candidates need to take care of, and one of the first things that comes up is essentially the GMAT, GRE prep, right? And it's especially difficult because in most cases, as in your case as well, it could have happened that uh, when you start working for the GMAT, you're also working simultaneously. You're also working on your in your professional life. So could you tell us a bit about how did you manage the GMAT prep alongside your work, and any suggestions or tips that you would have for future candidates on how they could manage this better?
Sure. So at Flipkart, my role was very demanding. The timings were around 10 to 12 hours easily every day. So for me, it was very important to optimize and find a right slot for me where I could maximize my productiveness. And for that, after various hits and trials, giving GMAT once before, I found that early mornings were the time which I could focus the most on. So that's what I did. So I used to wake up at around 4 a.m. in the morning. I used to go for my runs. After coming back, I used to start studying at around 6. I first started with basic theory parts, that is all the GMAT official guides. Then I worked on the GMAT club forum, there are a lot of questions. I practiced using those questions, and I started making an error log, which I used to refer to come back and see my where the areas which I need to focus on. So I used to start studying at 6, study till around 9, and then I used to start preparing for my office. And 10 o'clock is when I used to reach my office and stuff. So 6 to 9, 3 hours I used to take out every day to prepare for my gym.
Right. So if you had to suggest somebody how to prepare for GMAT, or one piece of advice that you would want to give, what would that be?
I feel there are a lot of resources available on the internet, but the very basics like the GMAT official guides, the GMAT club forum, just focusing on these two aspects and the error log. And rather than getting confused amongst all the resources available online and offline, one can increase their performance and scores overall.
Right. Makes sense. Now coming to the application itself, the school selection of where you actually want to apply to, that is a very, very important sort of aspect of the application process, right? So can you tell us a bit about like which schools did you apply to, and how did you decide that these are the places that you would want to apply?
Right. So there were three crucial aspects which were there in my mind before applying. So having an experience of around 4 years, I did not want to invest 2 years in studying. I wanted a course where I could like quickly get my degree and all the lessons and start again with my career. So 1 year course, that is how I shortlisted all the 1 year courses. Then the second aspect was the geography. So given how fast India is growing, the future potential India has, I did not, uh, I found, I thought of applying to schools in India only. And then finally, the major aspect was the field. I was focused on product management. And ISB has a great course on product management and a lot of placements, majority placements happen in product itself. So these were the three criteria which I chose before applying.
Right. And what would you say? Did you have any apprehensions about your application, or were you convinced that ISB would be a place that you could get in, or did you have any apprehensions regarding your profile, your candidature, when you started working on your application?
Right. So for ISB specifically, the average GMAT score is a 720. My GMAT was a 710. So that was one aspect where I thought being a general engineer male, again, like everywhere, being an overrepresented pool of in the overrepresented pool, I thought that might be a place where my candidature might get affected. But at the end, I realized that the overall profile and my interviews compensated for the maybe 10 points lesser GMAT.
Right. Okay. And how did you go about the essay questions at ISB? Because ISB has two major questions. One which focuses on what do you bring to the school, and the second one is what would you take away from the school, right? So how did you approach these questions? Any insights that you could provide, or any suggestions that you would have for people when they start applying for these schools later on?
There are two aspects to it. Like you must be knowing that like we worked on it together. So when I started my essays, I there were a lot of gaps. So when I was doing it on my by myself, there were a lot of gaps I found. Like there was a lot of extrapolation of things. Like maybe because something I did in my school, I thought that okay, if I connect my future goals with that, it might make my candidature stronger. But that wasn't substantial enough. So after speaking with you after our first conversation, like where you were brutally honest about the overall essays that how I was going about and how to improve it, I realized that uh, instead of like extrapolating a lot or like skipping a lot of steps, it's better I take encouragement from my latest or more substantial experiences. And that is when I like started thinking more about my work at Flipkart and how uh, what things I did over there, and how can they relate to my short-term and long-term goals after ISP. So that was regarding my first essay. Coming to the second essay, what I wanted to take away from ISB, as I earlier mentioned, like one was uh, the knowledge gap, to cover the knowledge gap which I had already, and also to accelerate my career further. So I majorly wrote around these 2 points in my second essay.
Right, right. Now, obviously, when you reached out to us, as you mentioned, when you reached out to us for essay reviews for ISP, I think you know we found certain lacuna in your essays, and obviously we worked together to sort of build on those. But then, could you help us understand why did you decide to work with us, or how did you sort of uh, come to know about us and say that these guys look like good partners to have in this journey?
Right. So a few of my juniors from IIT-BHU had already worked with you and had got great results, like whatever they aspired for. So that is when I first got to know about you. And then I connected with you on LinkedIn. And uh, back then, the way I simply asked you, I remember that I'm planning to apply for an ISB, and what would you recommend? Not ISB, for a MBA, and what would you recommend? And instead of like giving me a step-by-step process, you guided me towards a direction, and you said ki it's better that if I think what I would want would help more. So something around that basically. So that is when like I thought, okay, maybe the ownership that I get in my essays would be better. But still then, back then I don't think I immediately connected with you. I started working on it by myself, and but then there were a lot of gaps which I found. And then I thought of taking your help. I gave you a call one day and I told you about how I approached my essays. And the brutally honest feedback that you gave me uh, was the point where I thought that, okay, this is the right person I need to work with. Piyush would help me a lot. Uh, and that is when like it was like an icebreaker for me, like because nowadays everything is so formal and but I like a feeling of from you also from IIT-BHU, so bhaiya wali jo feeling thi wo it came back. And I thought, yeah, right, I should work with you. So that was the point where I said,
Anything, what would you say? Is there anything that stood out for you, or you would suggest that, something that we could do better to enhance our services a bit?
the only thing that is coming to my mind is maybe marketing a little better because you guys are really good. I feel like you guys know you are working alone, so you are really good. So like people should know, like there's a marketing
That is
management masters. Yeah.
that is very kind of you, yeah. Now we also work together on interviews, right? And we helped you with your mocks for ISP. Could you tell us a bit about how did that go about? How did that go for you? And anything that you liked about it, or any suggestions that you would have for us?
Right. So again, coming back to the same point, the brutally honest feedback that I got in both my mock interviews was like that opened my eyes that how much more I need to prepare for the actual interview. And it set the right tone and precedence, which like helped me focus more. And obviously the feedback which I got from both Harsh and Shikha, so and I think it was a very different approach which I got. So like Shikha's interviews, they were more focused on my work experience, and that helped me like tackle a lot of like questions which on the interview date came. So the question like I already have a good experience of 4.5 years. I've got decent promotions like every 1 or 1.5 years. So my trajectory is on a good path. But then why an MBA? This is a question which Shikha asked me and made me think, right? Like why exactly? And that is when I like spoke with other people with a similar background who had a good career trajectory and still wanted to do an MBA. So that was a key question which I might not have answered correctly during the interview, but given that Shikha asked me and I thought about it, the same question got asked and I think I nailed it in the main interview. The second part, Harsh's interview, was where I got uh, the honest feedback, like how much more preparation is required for the actual interview. And actually, thanks to him, So in my panel there were 4 members, and though online it is mentioned that maybe ISB questions are more like in depth and not broad, and they are not like grilling. But one of the interviewers was from Myntra, which is a Flipkart subsidiary, right? So he had a lot of questions for me regarding that. And because I got grilled so much in my mock interviews, I did not lose my composure during the actual interview at that time. So
Right.
that really helped.
That's the benefit and the disadvantage of going to a to a grade B school, right? You have alums who are working in all the great companies. So you find
Right.
somebody from your own company and they can grill you as much as you want, right? So that's really nice to know, because each of the interviews in that case, each of the mocks that you took, they kind of very specifically helped you out in your actual interview at the end of the day. So that sounds
Right.
very, very nice, and very kind of you again to share these experiences. I think let's move on to the final section that we have, what we call as the rapid fire round. And we have a few questions which are very sort of light, but and we are expecting very light answers, like one word or one sentence answers. So now that you're out of the process itself, what would you say is the biggest myth about MBA applications that exist?
Having worked with both a big consulting firm and then with management masters, a boutique consulting firm, I feel there was a clear, stark, and clear difference between both working styles. Advantages which I saw working with you. Number one, the kind of ownership you displayed was way more than any other firms. Secondly, the kind of focus I was getting was much better. Ask over the WhatsApp message if I had any doubt. There was no need of setting up a time to discuss all the doubts I had over the week. Like any day, any hour of the day, I could easily reach out to you to clear my doubts. So I think these two things worked really well for me: accessibility and the ownership that was there. So that is a big myth. I think boutique consulting firms uh, should be explored actually, and not someone should not just focus on maybe a big brand name.
From your perspective now, that you've been through it, what would you say? How important is the GMAT score when it comes to B school admission?
It's just one aspect. Like uh, don't get obsessed about GMAT, because it is the only. So again, like this was actually a very big myth that uh, and people feel that it's the only objective thing which you can improve on. And so I got very obsessed with GMAT. Basically, I gave my GMAT 5 times, but I used my score, which I got in the second time itself. So all the other scores were equal or 10 points less than that only. So I feel that, so yeah, so if don't set up, like if you have a score in mind, like plus minus 20, I feel it works. You don't need to be like, if you're less or 20 points lesser than that, you need to keep on trying for that. So my target score was 720. I got a 710. So in all my attempts, in my mind, it was like I need to get a 720 to at least uh, try or
Right,
be in that zone.
right. That makes a lot of sense, right? Now, in your experience, what was the most interesting aspect of the entire application?
I really liked reading the essays. Like it gave me for during the GMAT prep, reading the essays and the reading comprehensions basically. That was a very interesting aspect. Like I got to know a lot of things about humanities, arts, so things that I don't normally read. So that was a very interesting aspect for.
Okay, so I can officially confirm that this is the most unique answer that we have ever received when it comes to the interesting aspect of the application process. I don't think anybody else that we have ever worked with or talked to has ever mentioned that they loved reading RC passages, during the GMAT prep. Uh, let's come to the follow-up question to this. That is, what is the most challenging aspect, or what was the most challenging aspect of the application process for you?
I think LORs was the most challenging aspect. Uh,
Okay, could you
Majorly
could you
because,
elaborate a bit?
sure. So majorly because, as I mentioned, like I in the past 1.5 years, I have worked under 5 to 6 different managers, and uh, so getting in touch with those managers, like where I had performed really well or something like uh, uh, maybe I'm not in touch with them that right now, but I wanted them to give an LOR because one, like they are uh, a very senior person in the organization. Two, like the work which I did contributed a lot in the growth of Flipkart. But then again, so reaching out to a very senior member uh, with all his work pressure, like, and also because this time, like the application time is very big. So it's like the big billion days and the festive season at Flipkart. So people are very busy. So that was for me was particularly very challenging. But people are very kind. The leaders at Flipkart were very helpful. So though a bit of challenging, it was personally my own apprehension, but people were more than willing to help at every stage. So, yeah.
Right, right. Makes sense. Now, coming to the next question, what would be that one thing that you wish you knew before you started on your applications that you already know now?
Again, so I'm sorry to sound repetitive, but again, GMAT, I feel. Don't get, I feel that I shouldn't have gotten so obsessed with GMAT. Like, I should have gotten over with it well in advance before my applications, focused on my essays a lot more, which I did actually, but like, it went on till R2. Had I focused that much in R1 itself, the results, I'm happy with what I got. But yeah, maybe something different would have happened. But I feel for the future candidates, yeah, focus, don't get obsessed by GMAT.
Right. And one final question that would be one piece of advice that you would give future aspirants.
Essays, tying your essays to your work experience, which uh, is the recency factor as well as the impact factor. Like how impactful your work has been recent and how recent has it been. Focusing on that, getting those stories out and showing that on your essays really worked for me. And that is something which people should focus on in their applications.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Kshitij. It was wonderful talking to you and to take your your learnings from the process. I wish you the best for ISB. It's going to be a great year of transformation for you, and I hope you are able to achieve all that you have set out for. But thanks again, and we'll keep in touch. Best wishes for your future.